Welcome to another live stream, my friends. Bitcoin saw a nice little pump this morning. However, unfortunately, my additional position entry got front run by just a couple $100. Is this a sign of weakness, or are we just testing some lower support levels before carrying on higher? I want to take a look at a few charts discussing the good and the bad because I truly see reasons to be prepared for either scenario at this point. So starting things off today, I'm actually going to start zoomed right into the 5-minute chart here just to take a peek at some immediate levels on my radar, since we never did end up quite hitting my purple box up here that I was talking about. And what I was mentioning to VIPs earlier this morning in the Telegram. So I did end up taking a little additional scalp short just due to losing the micro trend, but not the nicer setup that I was actually eyeing up originally. But yeah, with that, guys, looking at the 5-minute chart here, I mean, a couple of different things that we can look at right now. As I said, it's potentially a sign of weakness, the fact that we never got all the way up towards resistance of this bigger range here. I was mentioning in yesterday's stream, or actually, I think it was actually last night or yesterday evening, whatever. I was mentioning to VIPs that basically if we broke 88.2 thousand, that I thought it was quite likely that we come up and retest that resistance. So unfortunately never happened. Mixed feelings about that because one, I still have the remaining half of my position running from a couple of days ago from the original test of that resistance. So it's nice that that never got stopped out at break even, but I was hoping to end up taking some additional shorts if we just ended up hitting the 786 kind of a thing, but whatever. So as I mentioned, took a little bit of a scalp here. Not as big as the original setup that I was eyeing up, because this is just a scalp trading the micro trend, right? Because and just to show you what I mean, when we ended up getting front run here, this would have been just as far as the micro trend. I understand that it's micro analyzing, but we had our high here and a slightly higher high here, thus confirming this as our micro higher low on the trend. So basically, I ended up taking a little bit of a short on the retest with invalidation above our pivot point. Since that, we have been just changing the trend a little bit, or not even changing, just carrying on this downtrend since losing this level. And just to show you what I mean is there we would have had our low where we got that little bounce. We set a lower low here. So that actually confirmed this as our lower high. But then we set another lower low, then confirming this as our lower high on the trend, just the highest point between the two. And since then, we have set this lower low, and that then confirms this as our lower high on the micro trend. So basically my stop loss is just in a very small profit above this, basically just above 88.5 thousand, just kind of chasing the micro trend with my stop loss on that, because again, I'm just treating that as a bit of a scalp since I never got my ideal entry that I was looking for. But yeah, so from there, what can we expect out of Bitcoin? A couple of things. One, I don't think, even though I took this little bit of a scalp short and I have a couple other short positions running, you guys, I don't think that it's like the bulls have lost all hope at this point. Even the fact that if I bring up the Trendmaster indicator here on the 5-minute, so this is the MDX Trendmaster as soon as it loads here. So even though we will have a sell signal at this point, it is a higher sell signal, right? So as I talk about this kind of strategy with this indicator, quite often I look at which way these buy and sell signals are trending. And currently, so we have mixed signals because we have a lower buy signal, but the fact that we broke this sell signal here, that's a nice sign of strength for me. So that's why at this point I have a Fibonacci pulled from our low here, just because I think it is just showing that there's potential support here, just a little bit of strength since we got that higher trending sell signal. I would be looking for some sort of a higher low to form, hopefully around my STUBER fib, basically the 786, 886. But basically our potential support ranges from about 87.4K down to about 86.4K. So about $1,000 support range there if we end up dropping there. That being said, guys, for those of you who are interested in seeing way more examples of how I'm looking at the market, some of my trade setups, strategies, and so on, be sure to scan the QR code on the screen and sign up to BloFin to gain access to the current promotions as well as future promotions through the no KYC exchange that I personally trade on. And that will also grant you access to my free Telegram channel. So this is the current promo that they are running until about the January 7th for my followers. So that if that is something that interests you, be sure to get involved there. But yeah, guys, so far I would like to see that support end up holding if we see that little bit of a pullback down there. But if we do end up losing that support, we need to start being a little bit careful, because if we look at the 4-hour, and I know this is something I mentioned in yesterday's stream, or actually, sorry, not yesterday. Yesterday I was out snowboarding all day. The day before, I had mentioned that we ended up getting this lower sell signal on the MDX Trendmaster on the 4-hour chart. Now, last time I warned about this was when the price was trading at about 110K, and it was very much a very serious signal, the fact that we had that lower sell signal. So at this point, the fact that we are just kind of ranging sideways, it's possible that this is just going to kind of get chopped up, this indicator, and it's possible that this lower sell signal will not get the same sort of thing. But looking at that from a bullish perspective, then there's a couple different ways we can look at this. Is one, yeah, we need to be careful because this could be warning us about a continuation to the downside. However, that being said, if we end up breaking this level, you know, we just got our pivot here right before this lower sell signal, basically. So this resistance here at about 90,400 US dollars, if we can end up breaking that, we would be invalidating that lower sell signal. And that would actually be a very nice sign of strength, in my opinion. And we would likely end up printing a higher buy signal. And at that point, we could consider the possibilities that maybe we are actually breaking this downtrend, at least for the midterm. That's where we can look for a more serious bounce, maybe getting back up towards that 100,000 US dollar level. We could get a very nice bounce if we can invalidate a sign like that. So that's what I would really like to see the bulls do. I mean, yeah, we obviously have these other resistance boxes above us if we end up breaking through that. So it's good to acknowledge them. However, if we end up invalidating that downtrend on that indicator, I think at this point, just how that has all played out and how this is shaped up, I think that it's a lot more likely that we just end up breaking right through these resistance levels, as long as we can end up breaking this trend. If we can end up breaking, I would like to give it a little more wiggle room, a little more tolerance. So let's say even breaking above 90.5, 90.6 thousand US dollars. I think that would be a great sign for the market. And I'm not totally opposed to the idea of smashing through resistance in that case. Obviously doesn't have to happen. We're just going to have to watch how it plays out and play it as it comes. But that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. And, you know, there is potential for that. Looking at the MDX long short ratio here, this is on the daily chart, but you can see that retail has been building short positions while we've been trading sideways here. You can see that the shorts have been starting to climb the last couple days here. So as long as retail is starting to FOMO into the short side of things, thinking that there's no hope left for the market, if retail continues building those short positions, that is excellent market making liquidity for the market makers to push the price to the upside. That being said, if retail gets FOMO as soon as there's any signs of life from the bulls and they start building longs aggressively again, that's where we're going to end up continuing our downtrend. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Zoom into the hourly, see if we can see anything much more clear here. No, I mean, either way here, you can see that just longs are obviously in control. We still have 66% of retail traders are long. So no matter how you look at it, just longs are clearly, I want to say in control, just because they have been, you know, on the top side of this indicator for such a long time. But in control doesn't necessarily mean what it sounds, because that makes it sound like the longs are winning right now. And generally speaking, what it's actually showing is that as retail longs start building, that's where we keep pushing to the downside. So Let me know in the chat how you are all doing. I hope that this stream is working out. The thumbnail for some reason was looking weird, and I'm hoping that this is actually streaming properly for you guys. So let me know in the chat if you do hear me clearly, see the charts clearly. And guys, if you do appreciate me just trying to be the voice of reason and looking at the charts for what they are and keeping a level head in this crazy market, do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But yeah, I just really want to just kind of go over some of these important levels, like I said, just to kind of have a few things on our radar. Because like I said, it's not that all hope is lost for the bulls at this point. Another thing I want to mention, you guys, from a bullish perspective, is you guys know that I've been quite vocally bearish on the weekly chart for quite some time because it has looked exactly like our previous market cycle. Now, that has not changed. This market cycle structure still looks identical to last bear market structure. And that means, that's going for not only the structure, losing that horizontal level, losing the diagonal level, coming back to the 886, having the RSI at approximately when it touches the 886, that RSI is right around 37, 36. I mean, even the relative strength of the market is identical. Everything is so identical. However, guys, I have been talking about this kind of formation ever since about October. And it's not so much that I want to flip-flop my opinion, but I will admit that recently in social media, on X, crypto Twitter, all, social media in general, I'm seeing a lot more people starting to notice this. Now, I do feel like I was early in noticing it, but now that a lot of other people are starting to notice it, just because it is obvious when you zoom out, typically speaking, we don't get the exact type of a top formation. So it's possible that this isn't actually a market cycle top like it was last cycle. That being said, there's a couple ways this could go. One would be, obviously, as I've been talking about for a while, if we end up getting a bounce to that 100K level, which would be the 0.5 fib of this fib setup, and that would just be very similar to last market cycle as well. That would line up again, just playing out absolutely pinpoint accurate to last cycle. Something that would be a little bit different, and I think would be even more painful for the market, because FOMO would get so strong if we start getting even closer to all-time highs, would be if we end up doing something like this, going right up to either that 214 target and then ending up going full nuclear. That is something that we have to watch for. Even if we end up getting a very nice rally, you guys, just understand that when we start getting towards those massive macro resistance levels, you will see social media will get just completely delusional, and crazy market targets are going to get thrown out there and that sort of thing. But that would be a perfect bull trap, in my opinion. And that 214 target lining up something like that, for one, if it's depending how long it takes to play out, obviously, it could be a perfect retest of this old diagonal support flipping into resist. That could line up, as well as if we pull a bearish fib from our market cycle top at this point, that 214 target would be basically the opposite 786, right? So, it's very possible we get something like that, in which case it would wreck so many people, because it wouldn't be exactly like it was last cycle. And the people who are holding on to this theory, much like myself, holding on to the theory that we could be playing out the exact type of market structure. But if we end up pumping to that next target rather than just the first target, if we end up hitting the second target this cycle instead, that would throw those people for a loop as well. And in my opinion, it would be more painful to play out, because it would let even more time pass with people forgetting how to act around the macro resistance levels, and just how people would think that enough time has passed that we're going to go to new all-time highs and stuff like that. And that could be an ideal trap. So just something to watch for. Obviously, it's not like I'm presetting orders at that level at this time or anything like that. It's not like I'm trading the weekly chart at this point. It's more so that I'm just zooming out and looking for potential scenarios, because I have been seeing Like I said, so many people mentioning this formation here in the charts, comparing it to last cycle, that, it's starting to be a common theme. And I want to look at something similar, but, just how it could be a slightly different variant of that. And I think that would make a lot of sense, especially with how well the 786, 886 fib pocket has been respected this cycle in general on the lower time frames. Absolutely possible we end up seeing something like that. But obviously, anything is possible. The market doesn't care about my thoughts or my opinions, and we could just end up doing something like that and straight bear flag any day now. Who knows, right? I'm just looking for potential scenarios at this point, but when it comes to actually trading, I'm more so looking for those lower time frame setups, those specifically those Fibonacci setups and that sort of thing. All loud and clear. Perfect. Thank you so much for acknowledging that and clearing that up, because I was a little bit nervous that this stream wasn't going to work. Like I said, the thumbnail was just looking a little weird when I was looking at the channel, but glad that it's working out. Happy New Year. Yeah, it is. Well, what? Not quite. Very close, but yeah, absolutely. Happy holidays, happy New Year, my friends. Probably won't be streaming tomorrow. Actually have another event I have to go to. I shouldn't say have to. I'm excited to go to tomorrow, but yes, holiday season wrapping up soon, so my streams will be more on a regular basis again. I know during the holiday season, everyone's schedules get all messed up with visiting people, friends and family and all that sort of good stuff. So I am planning to, after the new year, going to be more consistent with the same time live streams and just being in the Telegram more actively again and that sort of thing. But yeah, what do we all have going? Bitcoin dominance. I was mentioning this in my last stream, the fact we have mixed signals here on the daily. We have lower sell signals. We have higher buy signals. If this higher buy signal turns into something, it would be bullish for this chart, but bearish for the market in general. If that ends up pushing Bitcoin dominance to the upside, I think that would be a big red flag for the market once again. However, if this lower sell does end up just pushing us over and we just end up rounding over and carrying on to the downside and pushing that guy off a cliff, that would be a huge green light in the market for my point of view. Ethereum hasn't really changed since my last couple of streams, just basically trading right below that 0.5 fib still. AVAX, all these altcoins are still looking very similar, not really changing in structure all too much. Some of them, we got hype, something like this, hype AVAX. Even Solana starting to, well, I have mixed feelings about that one, but a lot of these altcoins, I would still really prefer to see them end up filling the whole wick from October 10th, that big crash that we had. Quite often we end up filling those big scam wicks, as most people would call them, but so often that's a big warning shot as to where the market is going to trend to. So it's still very possible, and I would still love to get into a long position on something like that, especially, I mean, it doesn't have to happen. It's just kind of something I'm watching for at this point. But if we could end up losing that level and reclaiming it very quickly, that could be a nice tight stop loss long opportunity. And not saying it has to play out, but it would just have a nice clear invalidation at that point and just a nice tight stop for the size of potential reversal that could be. And that's not just AVAX, that's several altcoins, right? AVAX, hype, very similar. I think there was Inge was another one. Solana, I have mixed feelings about right now. We did actually get a wick that broke the very, very micro trend lower high, just because lower high. We got that little wick above. That looks more like a swing fail, if anything, because we obviously would not have invalidated my 115 fib on something like that. So that would have been a nice short opportunity. I wasn't watching that level, and I never did take that. Because I also have mixed feelings about this. The fact that, yeah, I mentioned that's a very micro structure looking, but really this would be the low. This would be our lower low. This would then be my confirmed lower high on the trend. And that's why I have this bearish fib pull. We could absolutely end up going to the upside. Just understand that there's potential resistance starting around $140 to about $152 for Solana. So just something worth paying attention to there. So alts, I have mixed feelings about at this point. If that Bitcoin dominance, like I said, if it gets pushed off a cliff, that would be great to see for some altcoins. But altcoins, I have mixed feelings about them. A lot of them, just like with hype here, it does look like it's starting to try and staircase higher, right? Consolidating sideways, going a little higher, consolidating sideways. But again, I would feel much better if this wick had actually filled completely. And it got very close on hype, a lot closer than some of the other altcoins. So just a little bit of mixed feelings right there. How do I feel about the total 3? That is an excellent question. I have not looked at the total 3 in a long time. Mixed feelings about it. Very close to filling that wick. Interesting. Notice that I'm assuming that's October 10th. Yeah, that October 10th liquidation event, if you want to call it that. Notice that it played down to the 786 on the total 3 absolutely perfectly. Just looking at this previous peak back here for the total 3 to our higher high, pulling a fib from our higher low. So for this very large range here, and notice we came down perfectly to that 786. So the way I would look at this is very similar to altcoins. I have mixed feelings. I feel like we could still end up filling this wick. However, no matter how you look at it, we are starting to get to support. So I'm not saying that support can't drop, right? Just like what I was talking about with Bitcoin, it's very possible that this trend is just consolidating sideways before continuation to the downside. That's very much a possibility with the total 3. How likely is it? I mean, we're just going to have to see. This isn't a chart that I analyze all too often, but yeah, looking at it right now, like I said, it looks weak to me, but still technically at a support level. It's just that if we end up losing this support range of this chart, then we could be going right back to, much like how I've mentioned, that unthinkable target of about $40,000 on Bitcoin in case we end up dropping to the 786 of the full market cycle. But much like the total 3, I would expect something very similar if we end up losing this support, that is, right? So we'll have to see. There's a lot of things in the market right now that are really at a make or break, right? When we start looking at altcoins, and that explains why the total 3 looks like that as well. Bitcoin being there as well. There's just so many things that are looking weak, and momentum is favoring the bearish side, in my opinion. It's just that you hate to get too bearish at support, right? I know now, and you guys know, I've been more bearish than a lot of people, but the difference is I was bearish, and I even mentioned to you guys live on stream, and those of you guys in the Telegram back at, what was it, 125.2 thousand is where I ended up shorting, right? So I got bearish at macro resistance, whereas a lot of people have waited until everything is dumped for months, and now people are starting to get bearish. So although I'm still favoring the bearish side of things just because momentum is on the bears side, I'm also open to the idea that, that move, the majority of that bearish move may have played out at this point, right? That's why I was playing the bearish side of things the last 2 months. Now, as things start to chop around sideways at a potential support zone, it just kind of gets a little bit more tricky at this point, in my opinion. The last 2 months, honestly, they were so easy to trade, you guys. I found the last two months, did I say weeks or months? The last 2 months since, well, leading right up to a couple of days before that big dreaded dump in October that everyone was calling for manipulation, everyone saying how unpredictable all of this was. Guys, those of you guys in my Telegram channel, those of you guys on these live streams, we were absolutely crushing this trend. This downtrend was so predictable because even though it was gross to look at if you want to be a moon boy, just how well we were respecting market structure. Whenever we would set a new lower low, we would never end up breaking that lower high on the trend. And it was a very clean downtrend. So yeah, it's not the direction that everybody wanted, but it was very clean, healthy price action for a downtrend and very predictable. Whereas now that we've been chopping around sideways since, where did we start this range? Well, for over a month now. It's a lot harder to trade this now. We just don't have as clear of setups at this point, other than those smaller ones, obviously, that we're still keeping an eye on. But for the most part, it was so much easier while this was trending to the downside. Now it just gets a little more tricky to find those cleaner setups, at least. But that being said, my friends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So just one last time, if you did appreciate this live stream and these live streams recently, please do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And just a reminder for those of you who are interested in learning and seeing more examples of some of my favorite trading strategies, how I use market structure, how I use Fibonacci's, and just more of my overall thoughts on the market in general, do yourselves a favor and get into my Telegram by scanning the QR code on the screen or clicking the link in the description down below. Like I mentioned, my partners at BloFin are often giving my followers some fantastic deposit and trading bonuses, much like this one that they are currently running until the 7th of January here. So if that is something that interests you, be sure to, well, you know what to do. Scan the QR code, get in there, which also grants you access to that VIP Discord. And with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Thank you so much for watching once again and being here with me, my friends. Peace out.